hospitality. Rajeev is a career banker with more than 35 years of experience in both public sector, private sector, and foreign banks. He was also the Reserve Bank of India in the area of supervision and regulations. Presently, he is the GC and audit head of IDFC Bank Limited. Prior to that, he was the Chief Executive Officer of IDFC Financial Holding Company. As a lawyer and a banker, he's been instrumental in a number of M&As of ANZ Grindlays, Standard Chartered Bank, and American Express Bank. IDFC demerger into bank and other subsidiaries, to name a few. He has been responsible for rolling over half a dozen private equity funds with gross AUM of more than $6 billion and incorporating entities overseas and merging some. He's on board of a number of subsidiaries of IDFC and is also on the board of governors of Management Development Institute, MDI Gurgaon. Dr. Oberoi is a profound writer and published articles in journals and national newspapers. So, welcome, Rajeev. May I call upon Debolina? Debolina is the General Counsel and Vice President of Legal for Wockhardt. Is a gold medalist in Masters of Law, and I've had the privilege of sharing a dais with her in one of the panels, and what a fascinating story of the lady. Maybe she can talk about it to you in break, but it's an inspiration, Debolina. I heard that story. She started her career in a bank in 1993 and then joined pharma and healthcare major Wockhardt in August of 2006. She is responsible for IP and litigation management, legal compliance, all corporate legal work, transaction management, and advises top management on legal risks, settling intricate derivative suits, and handling complex and composite global regulatory matters. She is one of the few general counsel globally who handle forensics and data analytics. Welcome, Debolina. I don't think I need to introduce Mr. Badrinath. Yeah, he's already spoken, but if I may, he is the Senior Vice President and Head Legal for Adani Group, and his current role involves M&A, international contracting and contract management, litigation and arbitration in multiple geographies. Prior to joining Adani, he's a known face as a legal head of L&T, which is into infrastructure management, oil and gas projects, defense production, power and mining. He also had experience of working with United Phosphorus, Reliance Industries, Asian Paints, and General Insurance Corporation. He carries with him over 28 years of rich experience in mergers and acquisitions, international contracting, managing contracts, strategy, compliance, arbitration, and litigation. Welcome. Anand Vardhan. He's the president of legal for Piramal Group, has more than 18 years of experience in legal function, and has extensive hands-on experience in various areas, including real estate construction and development, mortgage finance, dispute resolution, private equity funds, investment management. Prior to joining Piramal, he was the general counsel of Sun Area Property Partners, or earlier Sun Apollo, an offshore real estate private equity fund, and has been in several leadership roles at HDFC Property Fund and other leading business houses like ICICI Bank, Tata Housing, and Daewoo Motors. Anand is also an associate member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. Welcome, Anand. So I have, as you can see, a panel comprising of celebrities, and we look forward to the discussion. And it's my privilege to moderate this session. Thank you. Okay. All right, so let me sort of begin with saying where India stacks up for ease of doing business, right? So the report released by World Bank in 2017, late 17, which is a 2018 report, India seems to have improved in 6 of the 10 indicators and moved closer to international business practices. While for the last many years, India's ranking kind of improved 1 or 2 points, but this year it's jumped about 30 positions. But it's still, 100th country in terms of ease of doing business. Some of the things which have been called out by World Bank, which have sort of led to such a huge jump, has been resolving insolvency. So therefore, passing on insolvency in bankruptcy code, enforcing contracts, establishment of dedicated commercial courts, and national judicial data grid to monitor and manage court cases, and also protecting minority investors. So by introduction of greater transparency requirements for interested party transactions. Now, my question is, India being one of the largest economies in the world, and looking for foreign investment, and of course, the whole Modi's mantra, Make in India, which kind of seems to have kind of got diffused, is the 100th rank do justice to India, right? And what does India need to do to kind of substantially come up this curve and position itself commensurate with its economic firepower? Anand?
Am I audible? So while this increase in the ranks is certainly a step in the right direction, but I think still a long way to go. To achieve this, and I think as a company, we need to align the company with the global compliance standard and beef up the structures around it. And what is important to note that as a general counsel, I think our role is ever evolving. Most importantly, the growing aspirations of Indian businesses, and rightly so, in tandem with the growing economy of the country, which has further led to manifold increase. And I think Mr. Badri was also hinting upon that increase in the various rules, regulations, and the compliances. And what is important is that sometimes as a general counsel, you also need to be generalist, because as when we're talking about this growing business aspirations, sometimes as a GC, it's also very difficult, to advise upon some of the new businesses, sectors, or the products that you get into, because either there are insufficient, regulations, or there are cross-functional regulations. So as a GC, when I'm, advising on a, new product, I need to be well aware of, or rather well, cognizant of the multifold, or rather effect or ramifications of multiple regulations. And that's where, as a general counsel role, as a generalist comes in. You need to be aware of, all sort of wide-ranging issues besides your core expertise. And more than the legal acumen, I think you also need to understand the political, the cultural, the geographical of each and every jurisdiction, that you get into, and the kind of regulators or the concerned authorities that they're there. Sometimes you also need to understand the psyche of the, regulator, or rather the way of its functioning. Mr. Rajeev would agree with me. Sometimes when RBI audit goes on, I think it's very important to understand why those people represent that entire process is asking questions what they're asking to you, because sometimes it's beyond your, it's very important to understand why they're asking what they're asking. Here, if I can just, digress a bit, take example of, RERA, what happened last year. Certainly a great, big development, for the protection of the, customers. Also very important to, instill some sort of financial discipline and rather organize the sector like real estate. But this entire process, what happened, all of them must be part of this entire process. They forgot about the role of the bank or the financial institution as a lender, with whose money or the financial support your project is coming up. And once the act was out, I think some of us, with the help of some of the industry bodies, we had to go all around, mix all sort of representations before the state government, saying that, look, I am the lender of all these real estate projects. I've got the SARFAESI protection, and I don't have any acknowledgement of even my existence under the RERA Act. And while obviously some sort of acknowledgement was granted to us when the regulations came in, again when the RERA authority came in, we had to do all sort of, again, the same sort of exercise for them to acknowledge the existence, for them to acknowledge that, look, I've got certain protections under different regulations like SARFAESI. As in when default happens, I should be allowed to, exercise my step-in rights, to exercise my security enforcement. So all those of, nitty-gritties and the complications are there, but that's good. I think that's where we come in, and that's where our role is. Again, if you see recent developments, and I think most importantly, if you, corporate schemes that has happened, I think some of these regulators have become much more aggressive than they've ever been, and most importantly, from the governance point of view. That's where I think the role of GC starts from as simply as, putting in the internal processes compliance in place, to also, we were discussing earlier, to avoid all sort of conflicts of interest with regard to corporate compliance. And as a GC, I think we can also be termed as some sort of an ethical watchdog, from corporate compliance and governance perspective. And our role is also very important to somehow to protect the reputational integrity of the business houses that you represent, and sort of mitigate those reputational risks. So at the end, if I would like to summarize in a sense, as the GC, you are the key advisor to the board, whether the compliance is embedded within the legal or there is a separate risk and compliance function, maybe from formulation of the policies or from reporting requirements or license perspective. At the end of the day, the management is looking at you, at the GC, for the true implementation of it. And because you are part of the transaction, you are part of, you lead it from the scratch to closure of the transaction. At the same time, I think while saying all this, I think it's also very important on our part as a group of general counsel and other with this kind of assembly. I think we also need to, I think some of those are industry stalwarts and have already been doing it. But as a body, I think more and more of us should come forward and have an active role in public policy, because I think here the time has come wherein we need to proactively and positively sort of try to influence the regulatory framework itself, I think.
Great. Thank you for that, Anand. So, Rajeev, you've been a part of a regulator, right, and with the RBI, and obviously that's a big regulator, right? So, wanted your quick views on what do we need to do to 100 franc to me doesn't sound right? So it has to be top 10 if we are to live up to our economic firepower, right? So, quick thoughts from you. If you were winning a regulator's hat, what will you see change to make this completely transformed?
If I can repeat the question so that I answer it rightly.
Yes.
So you want my views on how you interact with regulators?
No. So the point is that the World Bank report on ease of doing business, India has improved 30 ranks this time and kind of got to about 100th place. Now 100th place to a top 5 economy of the world or whatever we are doesn't seem right to me, right? So what does India need to do to sort of change the game of ease of doing business?
And do I flavor it with what a GC is supposed to do in it, or you want to make it a generic motherhood statement?
Motherhood.
Motherhood, okay. I think there has been a huge amount of change which has taken in the last couple of years. Change is always there, but focus change, which has been appropriately highlighted by the powers in be. And it was quite well defined that what are the areas which pull us down as far as the ease of doing business categorization is done. Some of them were low-hanging fruits, which could be putting a new act in place because we thought that enforcement of our lenders' right is an issue. DRT was what it was. SURFACE was what it was. So those were the issues which they tried to address, and they were easy to do. There are challenges, if I want to look at it, about the regulatory governance also, which is a subordinate legislation compared to a law, which comes from a totally different angle, where for improving the ease of doing business, you are moving the authority and responsibility from the state into a body which is not the state, but made by the state, and has a right to oversee or comment upon the States Act, and that's what the regulators are. And since 1991, when we embarked upon the liberalization spree, things have changed. The first regulator, which was called a regulator, was SEBI. Otherwise, you had Reserve Bank of India, which I have had the honor of working. We were the God, and God told us we are God, and we thought we are God. Yeah. But when it came to SEBI, they wanted to be the God, but the Act did not allow them. And they said, if you are the God, somebody is going to sit on judgment whether you have done the godly act or the ungodly act. And then you have spat of regulators which are coming. Okay, I don't want to, bore you with too many things. That's an area of my personal passion, and I'm working on a very interesting concept with one of the law schools on the role and responsibility of a regulator, which no regulator want to see. They always have rights, but no duties, which extends to the area that regulators have come, they are having, they are passing judgment, they are being taken to arbitration or appeal, and they are going to High Court. But there is no documentation. How do you expect this? So coming to the point, instead of diverting, the other area which needs to look at is the regulatory part, where the quality of the regulation, the dispensation of resolution, or regulatory jurisprudence is documented so that it is easier for the doing business aspect. So that's the second part, and this I'm more talking about the infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, it is both hard and soft infrastructure. Hard infrastructure is making a regulator. Soft is making him do what he's supposed to do. Not saying, I said it, take a walk. That's not what he was made for. So that is also is a very important part. And I'm giving, again, as you directed, motherhood statements. Motherhood statements are always good because many people don't challenge it. And two, because it allows you to put your point in a very fruitful manner. And I learned this from no other than Acharya Rajneesh. He'll give examples which are motherhood and you can't say. If you have to fall, you have to fall. And every fruit falls. Can you challenge that? What happens to people who have to grow? They will take 20 years, but fall is 1 minute. So similarly, the softer area is there. And the last but not the least, if you have to really improve of doing business, is the psyche and the mindset, which takes a much longer time than the first level where you made an act and said, oh, I'm good. The second, it's implementation, which is underway. And last but not the least, the mindset of the people who have to be implementers and implementees, both. It's not only one. Many a time it happens that people like me, if their work is done quickly, I'm surprised. Arey, itna jaldi ho gaya? Kuch galat zarur kiya hoga. Even I'm not expecting things to happen so quickly, which is the mindset. So, in my motherhood statement kind of a thing, I hope I've answered your question.
No, this is obviously a great input, Rajeev, at this point. I just, when I was sitting on the panel, I just realized all of us kind of are very specific to an industry. So I'm from IT, finance and pharma. Mr. Badrinath, you are someone who belongs to a large conglomerate, different things, different industries, large infrastructure company. Any quick thoughts from you in the interest of time?
On the same
Same.
Yeah, of course. What we look at it is that today things are much better than what they were. Things are much better than what they were some time back, as Rajeev was mentioning about it. But point is that there is a little disconnect between what is enacted versus what is to be implemented. My practical experience I'm sharing, not that I'm going to give any motherhood statement, is that today the bureaucracy is at loggerheads with that of the kind of various other sources of political masters sometimes. Because the bureaucracy wanted to have a kind of a steady growth, steady systems in place, and things to look forward at a futuristic time as such. Whereas the politicians or the political setup wants it to go in a quick short manner because they wanted to deliver the results to the public very fast. Both are noble. The objectives are noble. Both the bureaucracy is working with absolute passion, and so do the political masters are working with absolute passion. But this balancing is the one which gets converted to ease of doing business. I think practically when I look at the sectors where we are facing the hardships is in relation to this particular gap. No doubt we are able to convince some bureaucracy, but the politicians come in the way. Political masters come in the way. Not for external reasons, that just keep it aside. Similarly, this is happening. I think to balance this factor and push us from the 100th place to maybe around 50 or 60, I think there has to be generic culture. Today, maybe I can suggest Accenture or the KPMGs of the world to have a kind of workshops conducted to the whole political master class as well as the bureaucratic master of a particular ministry to see that how well this particular function evolves. I'm sure that this is happening. But the second facet I want to share with you is that today, most of the industrial houses are educating the political and bureaucratic masters of what should be done to make the easy way of doing the business. It is not FICCIs and CAs who are doing it, But even the business perspectives, when we're making the presentation to the ministries, this will happen. But let me tell you, India is a very slow emerging country, and today we picked up a speed from 40 to 45 kmph. I'm sure that if we can touch 50, that will be good, and it will be touched.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
On a very lighter note, I can touch upon all this ease of doing business. I think what is also important is none of these regulators or the concerned authorities would exceed its jurisdiction. On a very lighter note, if you see, some of the examples, if you see MCA trying to do the SEBI job, SEBI trying to do the court job, court trying to do the parliament job. So I think not exceeding their jurisdiction and working within its ambit, I think that is also very important.
Very interesting point. Very interesting point.
Very controversial statement, Anand.
Yeah. Controversial, but interesting. Yeah. That could be. Yeah. So Debolina, the question, you belong to a highly regulated sector, right? Yeah. And I've been always fascinated by some of these sectors which are more regulated than the others, right? Everyone has to comply, but you are regulated. So I just want to get your views from a pharma, of course, but in a highly regulated environment, how do you sort of wave through the complexities and support your business? And I just like your views also on, do you see that we match up to the global standards in terms of being highly regulated, or is there some place or some experience that you've had which has been easier to manage than India?
So first, I would, before I answer your question on a sector-specific query, just to add to my esteemed co-panelists, where would or rather, what are the steps which would plummet upwards India from 100 to 50 and above? And, foreign investment and ease of doing business. I think somewhere we have missed the buck. And that is, there's a WhatsApp going around now because it is, tax paying time, the income tax returns and all. And it's a almost 2% people in India pay tax. Yeah. And if that's the market for an ultimate consumer, I think the lawmakers as well as the policymakers should understand that you can't have ease of doing business with such a less of an ultimate consumer who is going to consume all the goods at the end of the day. So I think instead of not having a holistic view, what currently has happened is they have gone, okay, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. Let's amend let's bring in an insolvency code in line with U.S. Insolvency laws. Yeah. Let's bring in the privacy laws in lines with GDPR. Let's start the commercial courts. It's done like, as if, okay, let's eat the chapati separately or the rice separately. No, it can't be. You have to think holistically. Ultimately, you should see who is the end user. Yeah. And if the end user who is the taxpayer is only 2%, then how can you have ease of doing business in India? So I think that was one motherhood statement I would like to make. Second thing is on the sector specific. And people have quoted Gita here, and they have, Mr. Oberoi has quoted, while we were talking outside, he's quoted a lot of stalwarts. But I would like to quote Dr. Oberoi here, because one of my, I started speaking about 10 years back, and one of my first 2-3 panels, I was with Rajeev, and I was the youngest in that panel, and, I had all the stalwarts, like I had Bharat Vasani, and Dr. Oberoi was there, and Shardul was there. That time even Cyril was there. So, and he said, and to answer that question directly, how the healthcare companies or the pharma companies are addressing, he said, any investor, any shareholder will always pay a premium to compliance and to the most compliant company. Fantastic. And I think today, the pharma companies as well as the healthcare companies understand that. So rather than, putting a barrier or, having a negative view that, oh God, I have to cope up with so many changes, because there are so many changes. And the changes are happening very rapidly. Example, US FDA coming heavily on Indian pharma. compliance, 21 CFR compliance, that's the technical term. In India, the pricing laws are changing so rapidly. The CDSCO, which is, the Central Standards for Drugs Organization, they are getting in new guidelines every day. Lot of drugs, products, the device rules have come in. So, every day we are facing a new opportunity, I would say, not a challenge, because in the challenge lies the opportunity. And the owners, or whether they are foreign owners or Indian owners, they realize, that at the end of the day, there's a good. And that good is going to get us premium. Now, how you reach the good is the way, honestly speaking, we are still finding the way. I can't give you a clear-cut answer how that way is going to be, but there is definitely a way which is being paved out, and some amount of grappling with all the new regulations, but it is being done, and there is no second option. It has to be compliant, because at the end of the day, safety, quality is, you are dealing with life. Yeah. And I think there is no price to life. So you have to reach that standard.
Yeah.
So that's
no, that's some great thoughts there, Debolina, especially what you said about, the taxpayer being only 2%, so the kind of addressable market being that small. That was a fascinating point you made. Thank you for that. I know this is kind of topic that we can talk the whole day long and still not be done, and especially with the panel that we have, with all of you being so senior. So we have to run with the topics, right? So I think this kind of topic will not be complete without something controversial, which is, the whole economy changing to data-based economy, right? Now, Zuckerberg faced the Senate, I think, yesterday or day before yesterday, and this whole controversy of misuse of data, etc., being in front and center right now. Coupled with the fact that come May, many of us have to start implementing GDPR, and obviously it would have started, the journey would have started for many of you. We've started about a year, maybe more than that before. And with Indian data privacy law taking its shape as we speak. Now, Dina, my question to you is, there's varied pressures on data privacy. How will it impact business cost-wise and also efficiency-wise, right? Because there is a price to manage all this, right? There's a price to put controls over what's required by law. So that's my first question to you. And the second, which will be allied to this question, again controversial, I think we need to wake the audience up as well, is the whole controversy about Aadhaar. Privacy being a fundamental right, and Supreme Court sitting in judgment over linkage of Aadhaar to all these banking and telecom and so on and so forth. So just want your views on that as well.
I think, yeah.
just before Badri, I just want to say that I think yesterday there was a Delhi High Court judgment on Facebook pictures being the person who has uploaded has a copyright.
Really?
Yes. So I just wanted to share this with
In fact, there is an interesting case which is there in the Supreme Court of Facebook acquiring WhatsApp, and the data which WhatsApp has transferred to Facebook, whether it tantamounts to a kind of a infringement of the personal law, that is a matter which to be decided by the Supreme Court. Number one. Number two is the Shreya Singhal case of 2016, 15-16 is very important, where it's been ruled that the kind of Section 66A of the Information Technology Act is completely null and void, and it has been struck out. These are the two contexts in which I would like to start. Yes, the data privacy is something which is sweeping the globe today. But each country has its own definition. That's the biggest problem, Rajeev, for us. The issue is that in India, there is nothing called a data privacy. There is no definition in the Act about the data privacy. You have a definition of data, and you have a sensitive personal data information, second definition. That too in the rules. But there is nothing called a data privacy or the privacy information. So the contextual relevance of a data privacy in India for compliance purposes is, let us say, at one level. If you go to the GDPR, It's a very high level kind of data protection. In the sense, the data privacy includes even your phone number, which can be tagged on to your email ID or to you. That will be data privacy. That's a kind of a sweeping thing. In US, they have regulated one more act, the Cyber Security Management Act of 2015, when Barack Obama was stepping out. That is the last legislation which has signed. He has signed two legislations. One is Cyber Security Act of 2015. In January 2016, it has been enacted, and Cyber Security Management Act. So the data in the contextual relevance across the nations is going to be very tough, and one need to comply with. There is no choice about it. Whichever sector you are in, be it in tourism, be it in real estate, be it in pharma, any sector, data is something which you are going to manage. So today, for us, it has become a challenge, but it has become an opportunity as well. Because the challenge is the one which anyway you need to face it. But convert that into an opportunity. Have your own stride. Yes, we are putting a lot of cost in it. This cost will be factored as some kind of a managerial cost at some point of time, but ultimately it will be assigned to the respective business groups over a period of time. But today it is being centered around a particular domain, which we have a typical architecture about it. But this is something, a cost we need to bear with it, we need to sail with it, and there are more opportunities. That much I can tell you. The data privacy or the data mining is a good opportunity for the companies who work really on the data space. I don't have to tell about pharma. For pharma, it is a gold mine, and for others, equally a gold mine.
Okay. Thanks for that. So, your views on linking of Aadhaar? Yeah.
I think linking of Aadhaar is a little step going a little forward. As I told you, India's data is primarily, essentially governed by the Information Technology Act of 2000, which has been amended to a certain extent in 2009. Even in 2008, when these amendments have been brought in and notified in 2009, still those concepts which are relevant to Aadhaar. Today, Aadhaar is the one which has got the biometric information, which gives you a sweeping information about an individual in a system. But if you look at the biometrics, in 2009 amendment, it has been put in a rule, but not in the act. The rule says as to what is the kind of a biometric information. But can the rule supersede that of the act? So in my personal view, probably taking the Aadhaar information to the kind of a data privacy today is going overboard. So I think we need to preserve that biometric information, because there is a host of data which is associated with Aadhaar, which the users may not be requiring it. They sometimes misuse it. So in that direction, maybe I think they need to have a prudence to link up with Aadhaar or not to link up with Aadhaar.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
I'm sorry for barging in out of turn.
No, of course. Please.
But I have a very personal view, and let me continue with my motherhood statements in this also. You know, what all we do is exactly what the economy or the society wants. I'm talking of the lawyers because we are GCs and we only react to that. Yeah. We can always have a view on the global scenario and everything, but ultimately it has to be within the realms of the role which we play. So you have a very well-oiled mechanism in democracy, where the views and the aspirations are converted into legislation, passed by the elected representatives and implemented by the bureaucracy. The point which I'm trying to make in the motherhood statement is that we can get into the realms of various acts, whether it's Aadhaar, data privacy, global acts. The most important thing is the entity which is responsible for making the regulations by which the people will be regulated should have the farsight to see what rules and regulations you need to protect their interest. And today in this country or many countries, the changes are so fast that the regulations are not able to catch up with them. Yeah. And that is what I think our data regulations are also facing. Whether it was 2002 Act, which was maybe right time for the right thing, but became obsolete very quickly, and you needed a 2008 amendment. But by the time the amendments were made, those amendment itself had become, I wouldn't use that, but strong enough. Then you came out with Aadhaar. The Aadhaar came out for a totally different requirement. Yeah. And there was one chapter or one position, part addressing to data.
Yeah.
They never thought. I mean, I have had the good luck of interacting with Nandan. Now, he was focusing on having a database of the country which we didn't know how many people exist here. It started with that. And midway we realized we can use it for too many things, which has been the fact globally, where suddenly data has become such an important thing that you want to run the people's life and everything on databases. So I think, I'm sorry, I'll stop it here. But the point is that if you want to have good data laws, it is important, at least there should be somebody who should have the far side to put all the, one is enactment. Second is consolidation of enactments. That's the biggest, problem which we face in this country, that for getting any, legal decision, you have to be looked into X number of, and that's why any judgment says subject to, notwithstanding, this, that, so much so that even the act which was, which India wanted to have between the Individuals and Companies Act, they have not been able to link all other acts which are impacted by the, I mean, that's again a motherhood statement, but I think from the GC point of view, this is a very important thing. At least when we are also working in our own environment, at least we should be in a position to put all these moving parts together and give solutions to the people whom we work for, which is the board or our own employees. You go and tell the employee that data is fine, but this is not withstanding the Aadhaar requirement and the 2008 Red Wire Amendment 2002. He says, please take a walk, tell me what I have to do, give me a piece of paper.
Yes, one quick supplement to it is that the direct linkage between an Aadhaar and that of the Act is that there is no regulator in between. This is one statute where there is no regulator. Information Technology Act is the only act where there is no regulator. Today, where the data is going, who is controlling the data, and even at the end of the companies as to how they are caring for the data, nobody knows about it. So if this data is placed in the hands of anybody and everybody without any kind of a limitation, I'm sorry, where it goes, nobody knows. That's in that context.
I think there's a proposal in the privacy white paper.
White paper, that Sri Krishna Commission report, it speaks about it. Let's see. It's a white paper.
We can ask him, but just on a lighter note, whoever will come to know what Vardhan has told, he will make a white paper, and in that white paper there will be a provision for a regulator, and he'll be the first regulator.
No, I mean, my personal thoughts in this are, regulation is important, but I think we should not over-regulate and choke the flow, right, of this evolving phenomena, right, which is, everything is data-based, right. But anyway, so moving on, and let's talk a little bit about corporate governance, Rajeev, where, I'd like your views, because, obviously you have a broad experience. Being a director of many companies as well. Now, would you agree that some of the controls that are being put, like, for example, independent directors or diversity on the board, is it being followed in true letter and spirit, or Indian promoters are circumventing that by appointing, congenial independent directors or somebody from their family as a woman director on the board? What's your view on that? And secondly, as GCs, right, with the increase of directors' liabilities, right, how do we need to, as GCs and in-house counsel, need to help to make sure that the board directors are mitigated towards some of these liabilities? Or board would not be doing day-to-day operations anyway, right? So they are dependent on how the controls are working. So as GCs, what do we need to do to help directors stay away from those liabilities?
Okay, Rajeev, first thing is, compliment you, and compliment for the fact that you can be an excellent anchor. You ask questions which are so wide, and the poor person has to answer it in next 30 seconds. So, one would have spent hours, hundreds of hours, talking about corporate governance, especially in the light of the Kotak committee report. And I'm in a small group which is led by Mr. Damodaran, where we only talk of these things of corporate governance. And having worked in a company where I have been on the boards of many of our companies for almost a decade, The answer which I would like to give is from the point of view of a GC. I would not get into the motherhood thing now, where, what all you can do about corporate governance, which has got enough to talk about. But as a GC, it's very important that you play the role of a trusted advisor on corporate governance also, in addition to what you do for the legal and compliance areas. And the reason for that is that the law is there, act is there, you can read it, I can read it, interpretation we go to the court. In regulations, there are directions, I can read, you can read. If there's a deviation, we go to the regulatory authority or whoever is dispensing justice in that. But in corporate governance, as the person in authority, you can be the judge and the jury. There are only recommendatory things if they are saying, well, Companies Act, they tried their best. And you just mentioned, Debolina, about Shardul and Cyril. I mean, Shardul spent his life trying to draft the provisions regarding corporate governance in the Companies Act, which took 6, 7, 8 years to build. Then you had clause 49. Now these are all pointers. You can make any kind of pointing things, but they are only guiding spirits. Ultimately, most important thing in corporate governance, and I relate corporate governance to personal governance. Personal governance leads to corporate governance, and personal governance is how you conduct yourself. It is more from how you are perceived to be seen rather than what you are doing. And that's the role of a general counsel. I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question, but I'm very passionate about this point, and I would like budding general counsels to have this as their mantra. That when you talk of governance, it starts from personal governance, your own ethics, your own value system, which are built into ethics and value system of the organization. And if they align to with what the law says or the regulation says, you have arrived. But it's easier said than done. Generally, it doesn't happen like that, because what comes into it? Vested interest. Starting from the individual who has vested interest, who wants to be a general counsel for all his life and will tinker with it. Starting with the board chairman who wants to be there for all his life and tinker with. And other also the so-called, and I don't want to be overreactive on this, the independent directors. The so-called independence is not there at all, without quoting the cases which are all in the press. And what does it require? I don't have to tell you that speaking truth is good. You don't have to have an act to say that speaking. There's no act which says speaking the truth is fine. You still believe the holy book and say, what, I'll speak the truth. Similarly, all of us know what is right, what is wrong. There are volumes written on conflict of interest. But here, everyone knows what is conflict of interest. Reclusing yourself doesn't mean that conflict of interest is not there. Being independent doesn't mean you are actually independent. And that is something, again, bringing back to my own, my job or my colleagues here. That is something which you have to inculcate, and believe you me, you will be paid for it. When I say paid, not in monetary terms, but in respect terms. Yeah. People will walk up to say, tell me what is right, what is wrong. And when you flavor it with the provisions of particular act, that only strengthens you. But everyone knows what is right, what is wrong. So, answering your question or cutting it short, not going it further, the corporate governance is a very good thing to do, and it can help corporates and individuals to grow, but it can be a very, very detrimental thing. If used the other way, it can destroy. Have I answered your question?
Yes, you have, and this is obviously rich, high-quality experience speaking, Rajeev, and the passion with which you said was enough, I think, as an answer for this, but great points. Any quick thoughts on this topic?
I'd like to just share one experience which Larsen & Toubro, where I worked for about 5+ years. It's got adopted into its system. I mean, most of you know that L&T is some company which has got some respect as a market leader, as a performer, as a quality deliverables from the Larsen & Toubro stable. What they have is they have multiple businesses, approximately about 8 major verticals they have it. In these major 8 verticals, this corporate governance, it doesn't rest with the board alone or with the top management alone. What they have done is that they have transcended it to the respective SBUs. SBU itself has got a kind of a board, which is not an official board, but a board of governance has been created for the respective SBU itself. It could be a small 500 crore business, or it could be even 20,000 crore business, but it's got a kind of a board. That board reviews the kind of policies, practices, issues that keep happening. It's not that issues don't happen. Issues happen in every business, every day, and everything as such. However good you proclaim to be fully compliant with the corporate governance, believe me, none is compliant. There are some deviations. So how well you factored these deviations, how well you brought these issues to the table or to the concerned management is the issue. So in Larsen & Toubro, these issues keep popping up once in a month or once in a quarter. Before the main board meets, the respective SBU boards meet once in a month, and to take stock of the situation as to what are the kind of corporate governance issues that are being faced. So as a result, what happened is that it's a de minimis principle. It's not that the issues are completely been either overlooked or given a kind of a rosy picture that yes, we are fully compliant. But the issues are addressed on a daily basis. Before the kind of presentation to the board, most of the things, let me say about 70 to 80% of the issues are already resolved because they have been spotted and they have been immediately been cured. Only 20% of the issues go to the final board, out of which what need to be stated will be stated, but definitely will be stated. I think that's a good example we need to take. That as GCs, when we propagate this message, we need to propagate across the businesses. Please come out with your own issues and try to have your corporate governance issues deliberated at a local level, not at a board level. This is a message.
Thank you. Yes, of course.
Just a very candid experience which I had yesterday. And this is, dealing with a corporate governance issue or a relationship of a GC with, departments across. Yesterday, 2 people retired from our organization. One was a business unit head, a very senior person, and another one was the compliance head. And they both wrote a mail to me. Dear Debolina, blah, blah, blah. You have been my friend. So the business head also writes, you have been my friend. And the compliance head also writes, you have been my friend. And, normally, I mean, just, in a layman's language, you would say, oh, compliance business, how? And how, you are a friend of both. But no. As a GC, you have to be everybody's friend. That doesn't mean that you have to start discounting various things. You don't have to discount ethics, or you don't have to discount procedures. You don't have to discount law. No. What you need to do is from the ethics, from the procedures, from the law, from the protocols, you need to get harmony. You need to see and make people understand, and which as lawyers, we are trained to do that, is that how you are not against each other, or let's say what a compliance head, and if you are the compliance head yourself, what you are doing or what the compliance head is doing is not that what the business is going to suffer. In fact, it's your role to say that if you do this, and this has to be done in this way, then it's going to promote your business. I think that chord is very important and at various levels right up to the top. And that is achievable, trust me. And if that's done, then as, Dr. Oberoi or Badri has said, you have reached a level of good governance. I don't know corporate governance, but good governance at all levels. And remember one thing, if the company is doing good, if the business is doing good, you'll have more problems, you'll have more cases. Because only when you make mistakes, you grow.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for that. And I think we have about 10 minutes to this, to end this. And I know you are all experienced people, so you can speak volumes, but I want, which is what I sometimes sort of have to deal with, maybe in the context of Accenture, since we have so many of us, and even a small change in the cost because of any changing regulation becomes, huge for us, and I'm sure for many of you, right? So for example, Payment of Bonus Act a few years back was made effective retrospectively. or if you read the in-works Social Security Code, you'll see that it seems, of course, fine print is going to be evaluated, but it seems that the employer's contribution is substantially increasing. That's at least from the look of it, that's what it seems. And everything has a cost impact in that. So quick, 1 minute each or less, on what's your view on how businesses view all these changing regulations and taking a hit on the cost to operate? Rajeev, but very quickly.
I think what as a GC, you are saying that and I'm putting it back to GC because we are GCs here.
Yeah.
If I was a business leader, I'll give you 108 other reasons what to do and what not to do. But as a GC, people look towards you for confirmation of doing rightful things. And there is, okay, you talked about your experience yesterday. I had an experience yesterday, and Anand can appreciate it. We had a particular, anyhow, I'm not supposed to talk. 1 minute, acha. The issue was that can we defer compliance?
Yeah.
No. If anyone who's saying you can defer compliance, this is within the roles of GC, and GC is also a compliance person. So the answer is very clear. Business is there because you are compliant. If you are not compliant and you want to cut corners, and the example which you gave of the working class, neither it is ethical, nor it is practical, nor it is good business.
Thank you, Rajeev.
Thank you. The compliance is something which has not come today. It has been there, it was there, it is there, it is going to be there. The statutes, they keep changing yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The businesses, they run the way in which they run. So all we need to factor is that don't be oversensitive to the kind of a compliance domain. The point is that, yes, we need to comply, as Rajeev was saying about it. But the point is, you need to expect the kind of thing. The expectancy which a GC can give it to the group is what it matters. Imagine for a moment that the GDPR has already come into effect on 25th of May 2018 in Europe. The shadows will come into all the nations with which we are going to do it as such, including that of India. So how much you can really cope up in terms of doing it with India, or that of Myanmar, or that of, let's say, Bangladesh, these are the things one need to be worried about it, or rather think about it prospectively and live with it. I think we have adopted, India is very good in adopting, GCs are very good at adopting, and the businesses are very good at adopting these things, and we'll continue with it.
One example, and especially with respect to cost, you said, cost and compliance. Yeah. This is an example of a pharmaceutical company. One of the GCs told me this. There was an issue with the cross-border regulatory compliance, and the product had to be withdrawn from the global markets. It was a very small product, minuscule product, INR 20 crore worth. Somehow it was advised, management didn't take a call. Obviously, there was a breach of compliance, and the repercussion to that was suits across the globe, legal costs, and actually an injunction on a 2,000 crore product plus penalties. So if you are facing with a compliance and a new regulation and you have to incur some cost, I think remember this example, because if you don't do it, it can be 10 times more in future.
Great. I agree with that.
Same here. I think cost is secondary. I think this is a positive development, though there are new regulations and more regulations are coming in.
No, it's like the often quoted saying, right? If you think compliance is expensive, then try non-compliance. That's to your point, Debolina. Now, I know we've kind of hit the end of the runway, but I think we need to at least have the audience ask 1 or 2 questions, right? So any questions? We have a very eminent panel, so please feel free. Yeah. So then if there are no questions.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, for me. All right.
Sure. See, coming from a perspective of the Accenture, see, we have been in the GCs and we have been giving a kind of a perspective from inside out. Outside in, what is the kind of a view which you give in terms of the compliance and the cost of compliance? Do you think, the pointed question is that, do you think that the clients are feeling the pinch, our clients are feeling happy about? Our clients are feeling, oh God, I got to do one more thing. What's the feeling which you get from a top-down approach?
Yeah, so I think, again, all of you have already sort of spoken about this, right? The fact is, most GCs, like yourselves, have got to a position of trusted business partner, right? I think, in earlier times, and I think Vikas in his opening speech also said this, a lawyer was someone you sent a notice to and say respond. But today you have a seat on the table. So I think with that, what's happened is the boards, the SBUs, or whatever you may call it, or businesses, are also, adapt to understanding why legal is important and why compliance is important and why we need to do what we need to do. So, yeah, so I think, I don't know whether I've answered the question, but what I'm saying is it's understanding and acceptance of law, change of compliance, or to, the cost that comes with doing the right thing is a very accepted, that's my general perception. Yeah, thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you.